If you have an Explorer or Cricut Air machine, you need to stabilize your fabric before you can cut it with the Cricut. So I have a very lightweight cotton material here. I have my Easy Press that is set to 350 degrees for 30 seconds. And I have freezer paper. This is what you can use to help stabilize your fabric if you're not going to use it as a applique. With your using it as an applique, then you're going to use a double-sided adhesive to adhere to the wrong side of your fabric. And those are made by Heat and Bond. Actually, I have examples here of two of the Heat and Bond products. Wonder Under is a Pellon that you can also use. So the first one you can see here is the Ultra Hold. This is what you would use if you were not going to be sewing your appliques on at all. This will adhere your fabric appliques and require no sewing. This one, the Light, it even says sewable on it. This one you have to sew. It will adhere with the Heat and Bond Light, but it will not be permanent with this. So you need to sew in addition to using this product. Just follow the manufacturer's instructions on the back for how to apply it. Again, you apply it to the wrong side of the fabric. It has a paper covering on one side that has the adhesive on the other. So you put the adhesive side first against your wrong side of your fabric, fuse it as the directions say here, and then remove the paper backing, and then you're set to cut it using your Explore machine. If you do not want to make appliques, like I said, then you need to use freezer paper. So the first thing you would do is make sure that your fabric has been ironed nice and smooth and flat. Get all the wrinkles out of it. So the Easy Press is absolutely a wonderful iron for fabric. Works great. So I've torn off a piece of the freezer paper. Now you can, I don't know if you can see this in the video, but one side is shiny and smooth and actually has like a wax coating on it. The other side is just paper. So what you're going to do is, for a very lightweight fabric like this, we're going to sandwich the fabric between the two pieces of freezer paper. So I just cut out a piece that was large enough to encase my fabric. So this is, again, this is the smooth side, the glossy side up. Folding it in half, putting it down on top of my fabric. Now this fabric has a good print on it, so you really don't need to do anything extra. But if you had a fabric that was very light in color, then you would need to somehow mark this side of the fabric that shows that this is the right side. So I'm just going to come up here to my edge and put an X, just like that. Just used a Sharpie to do that. And that, again, is just strictly to show me which side is the right side. So now I'm going to take my Easy Press. You can also do this with a regular iron, like I've got over here. This is just my regular sewing iron. Set it to a cotton setting, does the same exact thing. So now I'm going to press this. I'm going to put my Easy Press on part of it. Doesn't matter if it shifts around like that. It doesn't cause any problems. Start my countdown, just applying a steady pressure to this. And we're going to wait the 30 seconds, and then I'm going to move this over and finish pressing the other side. Now, the setting on my Cricut that I would use, the Explore for this, I would use the felt wool bonded setting. And that tells you to use a fine point blade, which is just your standard blade. You can use the bonded fabric blade if you have that housing and that blade. And you can also just choose a regular old standard needle in your standard holder. You don't need to use the bonded one. That is kind of a Cricut thing, and you don't have to do that. You just have to make sure that the needle you use is brand new and nice and sharp. And then keep it specifically for using and cutting just fabric. That is one thing that the bonded blade housing allows, is that you have a separate housing to keep that needle just for your fabrics. So you can see I have fused this. I now have a nice sturdy piece of fabric that has been bonded between the freezer paper. Like I said, if you have a heavier weight one, fabric, you only have to do this on one side. Doesn't matter whether you do it on the right or the wrong side. The other benefit of using the freezer paper is that when you remove it from your fabric is just as malleable, has just the same amount of drape. In other words, it can fold, it can bend, just like if it had never been fused. It will look just like this. You'll see that at the end. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to take a green standard Cricut mat. And that's what we're going to use. If you have a pink mat, you can also use the pink mat, but you're not required with your Explorer. I'm also going to trim off this extra edge, because I want to be able to get this on my mat and not have this freezer paper be under my roller. So I'm going to trim this down on all the sides, just leave maybe a 1/4 inch at the most of the paper around the edge. Now I'm going to place this on my mat. Again, I marked that this is the right side of my fabric, so I'm going to put that side up. I'm going to place it right down on my mat here, line it up in the corner, and just gently press that down. I'm going to get my roller. This is a Cricut one, but you can use any roller you want. And this is great for adhering not only fabric, but also vinyl to your mat. So I'm just going to roll this, make sure it is well adhered. And now I'm going to take this over to my machine and cut it. Now, I do not have an Explorer any longer. I gifted it to a friend. But I do have the maker, and I have it set at the felt wool bonded setting. And I have a new blade in my housing, and it is the fine point blade. And we're going to go ahead and cut this. All right, so I'm over here now at my Cricut Maker. Like I said, I don't have an Explorer anymore to show you, but I do have a bonded blade apparatus in there, holder, and it is a new needle. I do have my fabric now. Like I said, I rolled it, used my brayer to roll it onto the mat. If you have an Explorer, you're going to need to change your dial setting to custom. Then on the computer, select the felt bonded wool setting and use the fine point blade, just like it says. And I am going to cut a square and a circle out of my fabric just to show you how it does on both of those. Now, another thing I've learned, this is just a hint picked up, is to do not leave the images that you need to cut close to the edge like the Cricut wants to put it. You know, Design Space wants to put it on the cutting mat. I move mine off by about an inch to have a good border to make sure that that stays firm on the mat, because the blade doesn't really cut like the rotary blade does on a maker. It kind of drags the point through the fabric. So the more that can be adhered to the mat around the edges, the less likely it is to pull up and when we cut this. So here we go. can see it gives it twice around using the bonded felt, the wool felt one, and that is enough to cut through the freezer paper and your fabric. And that actually worked really well. So definitely put it off of the edge. And you can see here as I unload it that I have it down about 1 inch from the top and 2 inches from the sides. So now I am going to pull off my outer edges that I don't want to use. And sometimes this sticks really good to your mat. So you might have to remove some of the paper once you get this all off. You can see it's kind of staying here, how it split it. So I'm going to move and start from this corner. All right, so there we have our 2 cuts. And it really cut out quite well. So I'm just going to use my finger here and pull this off. The first one, there's my square cut beautifully. Here's my circle, and that also cut beautifully. Now, before you go to use this, you're going to want to remove the freezer paper from the other side. And just give that a little tug, and it just peels right off. And you can see that this fabric is not stiff at all. It is very malleable, so you won't even know. So this is a great tip to use when you want to cut fabric to sew into a project, such as a quilt, a pouch, anything else that you may want to do that you're not doing an applique. So there you go. That's how you cut fabric using your Explore and freezer paper.